This is exciting, isn't it?
Here we go, guys, in 5, 4, 3.
Here we go.
It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Thank you for the good programming, and I appreciate the content and really enjoyed every moment.
It's a privilege to have you on your station and listen. It's good stuff. It's very educational.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, how you doing? Did you do something fun over the weekend? It is Monday, August 10th. I am glad you are here. Yeah. You might be shocked. I know you're going to sit down. If you're not sitting down, I want you to sit down. I have to tell you, the war in Iran is not over. I know you've probably, all the air has probably just left your body. Yep. Nobody's listening to Donald Trump. Netanyahu won't listen to him. The Iranians won't listen to him. And he's very, very frustrated by that. He is supposed to be the president of the United States. Everybody is supposed to listen to him. So there you have it. What was that stupid thing, his board of peace or something absurd like that? They came up with a 15-point plan for peace and how Hamas should behave and Israel should behave. And Benjamin Netanyahu was like, no, just no. Like, you're not going to tell us what to do. And this has been Netanyahu's whole argument. We are under mortal threat. And so you cannot tell us how to behave when our very existence is on the line. Now, some would say that's a little hyperbole, that Israel's existence is pretty much guaranteed. It's not going to go away. But Benjamin Netanyahu keeps saying that, the leadership of Hamas has to be gone. There needs to be a complete disarmament of Hamas, and nothing will be accepted but that. So the guy who basically got Donald Trump into this war is now turning his back on Donald Trump. Trump, I only liked you when you were doing what I wanted you to do. You're supposed to stay in line. You're supposed to follow my lead. And if you can't do that, then we're not friends anymore. Okie dokie. So Iran is now saying that as part of any kind of peace deal, they want us to pay for all the damage we've done to their country. All the buildings we've turned into rubble, et cetera, and so forth. Yeah, we have to agree to rebuild all that. And the funny thing is, in the memorandum of understanding that was briefly signed, briefly followed, and briefly thereafter blew up, we promised them something like there was going to be a fund, a $300 billion fund for their economic development. But they are saying, among other things, that, really isn't quite enough. And we should just flat out say we're going to pay for all the damage. And Donald Trump is saying, no, 1,000 times no. And nobody seems to be able to figure out who's in control, who should be in control, who might have been in control, who may one day be in control of the Strait of Hormuz. So there's that. So, big bunch of nothing. And the question that we should be asking ourselves is, where do we go from here? If Iran isn't willing to throw Donald Trump some sort of bone that he can use to soothe his ego, then nothing's going to happen. How long is the United States going to put up with this before Donald Trump gets back on his let's bomb them into the next century? There are reports, and, this makes perfect sense. There are a number of reports in the mainstream media that, what? Iran has figured out that they can pretty much do what they want and keep Trump hanging because of the midterm elections. That they now realize that this has put Trump and his party in a very bad place, and that if Trump restarts the war in a big way, that is going to really have an effect on the midterms, though, frankly, I think the midterms have already been pretty much determined by what Trump has done. But they're like, we're in no rush. What is it, 83 days? 83 days. No, they're not in any rush. Why should we come to a deal? Because we can pretty much guarantee for at least the next 83 days that you're going to leave us alone. We're not stupid. We see what's going on in your country. And we know better than a lot of Americans, Iran knows how weak Donald Trump is. The Iran war was a big part of the conversation in the weekend political shows. Senator Chris Murphy, sat down with Kristen Welker on NBC, and he flat out said that Donald Trump has lost this war. Something that anybody with basically a quarter of a brain, not even half a brain, if you have a quarter of a brain, it seems pretty apparent that Iran and Israel are not paying any attention to what Trump wants, not paying any attention to what Trump offers. He wants to be the peacemaker. He wanted the Board of Peace plan to be accepted so he could be as a peacemaker. Instead, he's being shunted aside like he is not important. Not important, not a part of things. Anyway, Senator Chris Murphy talked about how Donald Trump has lost this war with Kristen Welker. Listen to this.
Donald Trump has lost this war. America is weaker. Iran is stronger. The price to reopen the strait increases by the day. The supposed deal that's on the table right now would pay Iran $100 billion a year in order to reopen the strait. That is 1/3 of Iran's entire economy. What a victory for Iran that at the end of this war, they get paid to reopen the strait. They get paid to rebuild their military. They get paid to rebuild their support for proxies in the region. The answer to your question is yes, I will support a deal to end this war and to reopen the strait. I am prepared to support a bad deal to end this war and reopen the strait, because the only deal that is available at this point in time is a terrible bad deal. But the war needs to end, because every day that the war continues, America gets weaker, Iran gets stronger, and people here in the United States get screwed as prices go up and up and up.
You might think, well, that's one voice, but no. Mark Esper was the Secretary of Defense, the job that Pete Hegseth now has. Mark Esper was the Secretary of Defense in Trump's first term. So this isn't some Democrat, trying to be critical or hyperbolic or show Trump in a bad light. This is a guy who was Trump's guy in the first Trump term. Yesterday, he spoke to ABC's Jonathan Karl, and he had some very interesting things to say about Iran and where they are and just who has the upper hand in this conflict. Listen to Mark Esper.
The president told the world just a few days ago that the Strait of Hormuz was about to be completely open within 24 hours, and the Iranians are now saying it will never be open unless America meets a long list of demands.
Right. Yes, they put forward this agreement, Jonathan. Apparently, they had been talking for a week or so with Oman about opening up a northern route into the Gulf and a southern route out of the Gulf along Oman that they both would control or administer. Unclear what that means, but now we know that while that agreement sits on a precipice, they've put forward demands of the United States, which frankly are ridiculous and should be rejected out of hand. Demands such as the withdrawal of all U.S. forces from the region, the reimbursement for the costs of the war, the fact that we would end our blockade, we would end sanctions. So it's gone beyond the pale. But what it tells you is two things, Jonathan. First of all, they haven't apparently left any room for negotiation, and we know that's important. President Trump wants to pursue that, and rightly so. But secondly, and more importantly, it shows that they believe that they have the upper hand. They believe they are winning, and they are emboldened. And that's what we're up against right now after, 5.5 months of conflict.
That was Trump's guy, Mark Esper. Everybody but Trump seems to see the writing on the wall that at least until the midterm elections are over, the only way Trump will make any progress with the Iranians is to give them as much as possible of what they want. By the way, at the news at the top of the hour, you heard the reporters say that Todd Blanche was supposed to be confirmed today. Todd Blanche has already been signed in as the head of the Department of Justice. He is head of the DOJ. The absolutely corrupt man who should be in jail is now the top law enforcement person in this country. Bill Cassidy, the guy who Trump destroyed. Bill Cassidy, who once voted to remove Donald Trump from office after one of his impeachments. Bill Cassidy was the deciding vote. And he was crying. He was crying. You know, I know people aren't going to like me for this, but I just really think it's the right thing to do. No, you don't. No, you don't. You know better, and everybody knows you know better. So Adam Kinzinger has a terrific piece out today about the incredible, breathtaking cowardice of Bill Cassidy. It is staggering. Is he really that worried? Does he, will his family starve if he's not named to the board of a Republican-controlled or Republican-leaning company and get a nice check for being on the board? Is his family going to be on food stamps if that doesn't happen? I don't think so. Does he need to get a job as a lobbyist to keep food on the table? No. He's old. His political life is over. He has literally nothing to lose. He knows better. He did it anyway. And he was crying. Oh, some people aren't going to understand this. Everybody's going to dislike me for this. Yes, Bill, we are, and we do. Because you put your whatever. Do they have blackmail on you? You put your own well-being or your future career, whatever you think that's going to be, ahead of doing something that would save the country from a criminal as head of the Department of Justice. I have a lot of contempt for Republican lawmakers, but I can't imagine feeling more contemptuous of anybody right now than Bill Cassidy, who knows better. He knows better. Okay. The phone line and the text line are open. 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. David from Bloomingdale texted in about the situation with Iran. Happy Monday, Joan. Listening to you now about dump Trump and Netanyahu. He's reminding Donald that he is the dog walker, not the other way around. Are you saying that Donald Trump is the dog in this scenario? And that Benjamin Netanyahu is the one in control, the one in charge? Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you, David. And not only is it causing problems for us that Netanyahu won't agree to this peace plan, it is rubbing Trump's nose into the fact that he has no power anymore. He has no power anymore. Here's another text we got. After hearing from the liar-in-chief every day for months saying, quote, Iran is begging to end this, and, quote, we are very close to a deal, Iran has stated that they are not and have not been negotiating with the United States. Trump is negotiating with himself, obviously, and his enablers should be ashamed. Meanwhile, we all bear the costs and consequences, and the Epstein class is protected. Well, there does appear to be some talking, but as near as I can tell, we're not talking, we're listening, because Iran is saying, we want this, we want this, we want this, we want this. There's apparently 15 points that Iran is sharing with the United States government as to what it will take to open the Strait of Hormuz and stop, the military actions. And Iran is saying that until the United States agrees to their demands, that the Strait of Hormuz will be closed. And they reiterated again that they're in talks with Oman, the country on the other side of the strait. The two of them are in talks as to how best to reopen the strait with having no input from us. We are not a part of those talks. Okay, a little bit later at the end of the day today, we're going to be talking to political strategist Peter Giangreco. And one of the things that I want to talk to him about is a rising furor. It hasn't reached full-throated furor, but the more conservative, like a Wall Street Journal. I'm starting to see these articles about Francesca Hong, who is going to be on the ballot tomorrow when Wisconsin goes to the polls. All of this, oh my God, Francesca Hong, she's so radical, which is, of course, going to be the new focus. Once they get over the fact that Abdul El-Sayed has won in Michigan, because that's what right now I would say El-Sayed has them more worked up than Francesca Hong. If she's the nominee, though, if come Wednesday, that may change. But they are just losing their collective minds over this guy. Yeah, losing their collective minds. When he was speaking with NBC's Kristen Welker, Senator Chris Murphy, in addition to talking about Iran, also talked about Abdul El-Sayed. This is what Chris Murphy had to say about him.
Did you misread where the Democratic electorate is?
Oh, I endorse Mallory because she's a longtime friend. She and I have worked together very closely on anti-gun violence measures. But I'm really excited for Abdul's win. He is a candidate that is running on some simple ideas. Corporations have too much power. Workers have too little. Our politics are rigged. That's why prices are so high. Donald Trump's corruption should be unacceptable, and the Senate should be a place that ends it. So I think you'll see a lot of my colleagues in Michigan. I'll be there supporting him because he's presenting a strong contrast with a candidate who is pro-corporate, who is pro-Trump, who is pro-war. I think he's going to do incredibly well in that campaign.
You heard him express confidence about Medicare for all. Do you think that could pass the Senate if Democrats do, in fact, win control?
Yeah, I don't know. But I think what I do know is that people are sick and tired of the status quo on health care. They are sick and tired of pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies having all the power. And they have that power because our politics is rigged. I have supported a Medicare for all idea in which everyone would get to choose Medicare if they wanted. But I think both of us believe that the current system is rigged to benefit the big healthcare insurance companies and that everyone in this country should have access to the Medicare plan, every business, every individual. And if they did, I think people would find that's better and cheaper healthcare. And the only reason that they don't have that access is because our politics are bought off by those insurance and drug companies.
You may have seen Trump is also a little bit, maybe more than a little bit, obsessed with Abdul El-Sayed. He posted on Truth Social a picture of him and Melania, and then a picture of El-Sayed and his wife, of course, with her hair covered, and was like, look at the difference here, implying that somehow the whiteness and, Melania's in a gown and that somehow they were better. And Sayed said, yeah, the difference is I'm married to a woman who actually loves me. Ooh. This is not a guy who's going to get flustered and roll over. And I couldn't be happier about that. Could not be happier about that. And one final thing, I'm sure you've read about this by now, that Hunter Biden did an interview with the BBC. And among other things, he talked about his dad, President Joe Biden. And he said that the cancer has spread. He was diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. He said the cancer has spread despite the fact that his dad is staying active and politically engaged, that he's in a whole lot of pain. Listen to a quick clip from Hunter Biden.
The only thing that I say about my dad, about his health right now, is I wish he would complain more, because it's not good. The cancer has spread, is metastasized into his bones and further. It's very painful, and it's very debilitating in many respects, but he's still out there.
Yes, he is. It doesn't sound like Joe Biden has a huge amount of time left. If and or when he dies, if Trump is still president, do you think Trump will speak at his funeral? Oh, bigger picture, do you think Trump will go to the funeral that is held for Joe Biden? I don't know. Will Jill Biden be gracious and let him know that he's welcome? I don't know. What would you do? Because I'm not sure what I would do. We are going to take a break. We're going to be back with more calls and texts right after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Happy Monday. Happy Monday. 83 more days. 83 more days until we go through what might be one of the greatest political crises of our entire nation's history, and we come out the other side, because we are not going to allow anybody to distort or to steal this election, and that includes Donald Trump. He can go on TV and say, you know what, we think this was interfered with, and so we're declaring an emergency and we're stepping in. Elections are run by the states. The federal government is not in charge of our elections. There is a person elected in each and every state in this country, and their job is to organize, facilitate, and keep an eye on the elections in their state. So if you come from a blue state, and let's hope that the purple states too will not let the FBI or any other agency come in and take voting materials, but we'll resist that. We'll lock it up. We'll say, you know what? You want to send me to jail? I'm the governor. Send me to jail. Now, the red states, who, especially those states that have already said, you know, the federal government has said, well, we need all your voting information. Yeah, everybody's registration, who's registered, you know, where they live. And red state governors have pretty much rolled over because there is no longer a Republican that actually has a spine. They are all invertebrate at this time. Frankly, I'm kind of surprised they can even stand up. You'd think they would just kind of flop over, not having any spine, but so let's see what's coming. Let's prepare for it, and let's dig in and fight for ourselves. I'm going to read more texts and take more calls and talk more about what is going on today. First, let's go to our good friend Jim, who is on the line from Chicago.
Hi, Joan. What puzzles me and will till I go to the grave is why Trump broke his neck to become a half-baked celebrity. It seemed to be that was paramount as an ambition. He wanted to become an American celebrity, and nobody could turn on half-baked celebrities like America can. I can assure you that. And then he turns into an idol of the Republican Party, an idol of all things, where they give him this jurisdiction over intellectual property, military maneuvers. I mean, you name it. And they go to these rallies and they adore him like an idol.
Yep.
And you can see that it's cracking desperately. And not only that, but look at the situation we're in. The economy has lost I don't know how many jobs over the last 3 months. It's got a 1.5 GOP, which is the lowest that I can recall. Inflation is going through the roof. Healthcare is going. But the beauty, now the idealistic candidate was the one in Michigan. He said, and he's a doctor, Joan, and he ran the Michigan Health Department. He said, I'm all for cradle to grave medicine for everybody. Now, that's an idealistic approach, even the Democrats.
But that's the problem. It's in this country, it is idealistic. Every other developed country in the world looks at us and scratches their head for the way we don't provide any free or subsidized childcare. We don't provide any kind of mandate any kind of reasonable parental leave. We don't have health care from cradle to grave. We are a third world country in many respects compared to so many other first world countries.
Yeah, and Joan, it affords, this is sad, when we talk about freedom in America, I always felt pretty free in America. And if anything will free up is child care and health care. Now, think about it. Let's say you were an artist or you were going to be a bicyclist or whatever you were going to do. But if you knew you had health care and you're going to bicycle from here to Kansas City or wherever, and you fell off the bike, you could walk in anywhere and get treated. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I've been in European hospitals. My brother was in Iceland, for instance. He had an accident there overnight. The $5 charge. I don't know what that was for. And I've been in
years ago. A friend of mine who used to travel for business was in Scotland. And overnight at his hotel, he got very ill and had to be transported to a hospital, was taken care of, was released the next day, had pneumonia or asthma or pneumonia and asthma or something. And he said to them, okay, give me my bill and I'll leave. And they were like, there is no bill. There is no bill.
No, I know.
Okay.
I've reported myself to in all places because I used to go to the old communist countries. But I was moving my way to Russia. But anyway, But twice I availed myself to their medical and no charge. A young French doctor I was with, sweetheart, she's got cancer, and I explained it to her. She said, "Oh, no." I said, "Any charge?" "Oh, no charge, dear. There's no charge." And that's in Romania in a kind of a rundown hospital. So my point is, it frees people to be themselves, Joe. That's my point. Anyway, I think even the Republicans have to realize that the jig is up. That's what I think. Anyway, Joan, and thank you for taking my call, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for being a part of our WCPT team. I got a text. I had mentioned that I was just appalled by the cowardice shown by Bill Cassidy, who cast the deciding vote to put a criminal as head of our DOJ and was crying while he did it, saying he knows that everybody's not going to like him for this. Somebody texted in, "Hi, Joan. Yes, Bill Cassidy is definitely no John McCain when it comes to standing up to Trump and voting no." You are correct. And a lot of times politicians go along to get along. But in times past, in each party, there were one or two people, not a lot, but there were one or two people who would stand up for what they believed was right, and they would take the consequences. Do you remember that the reason that we still have the Affordable Care Act is because of John McCain? Donald Trump wanted and still wants to get rid of anything Obama's ever done. He wanted the Affordable Care Act to go away. It was down to one vote. John McCain was the deciding vote, and he voted to keep it. And that's why we still have it. One vote, one person standing up and making a difference. And Bill Cassidy could have been that guy. His legacy could have been that he stood up for what was right. And his legacy now is that he's a crying coward. Nobody's going to like me. People are going to be mad at me, and I guess I'm just going to have to take that. This is your legacy, Bill Cassidy. When it counted, you crumbled. You were a coward. Let's go back to the phone lines. Let's go to McKinley Park, where Sal's on the line. Hey, Sal, thanks for the call today.
Hi, Joan. I'm thinking about the disaster that is the Iran war. And this administration is going to go down in history as an absolute catastrophe for the United States. Think of what would happen if the United States were attacked and the attacker managed to kill 120 school children, as well as the head of the country and his family. Yeah. How willing would we be to strike a peace deal with them when there's no reason to strike a peace deal, for one thing?
Why would you strike a peace deal with all of that in the past? And you're in a position where you have power. The other guy's desperate for a deal.
Not only that, but the people of Iran, would the people of the United States settle? I mean, how would they feel if our government made peace in those circumstances? They would go crazy. I mean, we would go nuts. We would get rid of the government, right? So that's the kind of, impasse that we're in. Another thing is that these wars are such a devastation to the environment because of the amounts of fossil fuels that are burned and expended. I've been watching videos of Ukraine striking Russian military depots and oil facilities, as well as their Wellberry facilities, which actually must be storing a lot of fuel because the smoke from them is just obviously diesel fuel. It's got to be some kind of hydrocarbon fuel of some sort. And, we're going off the edge of the cliff in terms of the climate. The air that we had a few weeks ago in Chicago was a catastrophe. And Trump tries to blame Canada and wants to find them when, if you look at the history of climate emissions, the U.S. is still 150% greater than the country in second place over history, like since the start of the Industrial Revolution. And that second country would be China. But most of the stuff that they are using is exported. They export a lot of carbon, and we are the biggest importer of carbon emissions because we buy the products from China. Oh man, we've got a lot of work to do. It's just so staggering.
Yes, we do, don't we? Man, it's almost like when we finally get rid of Trump and the MAGAs, it's almost like we're going to have to rebuild the country from scratch. Don't you think? It seems that way.
Yeah, and we have to build up our own knowledge as well, right? We've been so busy dealing with Trump that, we've ignored things like, teaching ourselves science, teaching ourselves about the rest of the world,
Yeah.
We don't know. I don't know diddly poop about Iran, really. I've tried to bring myself up to speed. But,
Sal, I early in this conflict, I printed out a map of the Middle East so that I could remember what country was where. And I still have it because it's not a region that I learned a lot about. I never took a history class. I mean, I've read some things. I've read about, how the British divided everybody up, and the British helped, create these new countries, and they didn't really pay attention to cultures or who was already there. So the British set up a system that was almost guaranteed to be in conflict because of the way they did it. Almost guaranteed.
Mm-hmm. Iran has such a long, long history. I saw a video about the dynasties. My God, you can't keep track of them. There was more than a dozen dynasties covered. Anyway, I'll let you go.
Well, Sal, thank you. Thank you for the call, and I hope you will call in again in the future. We are going to take a break. We're going to be back with more calls and texts right after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
By the way, I told you at the top of the show that Todd Blanche had already been sworn in as head of the DOJ. Usually those events are pretty public, but we were told that Todd Blanche's swearing in for some reason was closed to the press. Isn't that interesting? The White House wouldn't even confirm for sure exactly when it was going to happen. Maybe they were afraid that Donald Trump was going to be taking one of his naps. And, do we wake him? Do we let him sleep? How does this go? But yeah, it has happened. Let's go to the phone lines. Our friend Ron is on the line from Chicago. Hello, Ron.
Hello. Over the weekend, Trump said that we are in semi-negotiations with Iran, wherever that means.
Semi-negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah, that sounds promising.
How does one do that? Is it like the hokey pokey? You put your left foot in, you take your left foot out. You put your right foot in, you take your right foot out. Is it like that? Is it like the hokey pokey?
Yes, I think it is.
I think so too.
Yeah, and he also said Iran is ready to give up because they have no money. So, yeah.
Iran is ready to give up. I don't know where he gets his information. I mean, you would think the president would know things, but it sure doesn't seem like any media outlet is saying that they're ready. They're ready to forget about making a deal. Are they even ready to seriously talk?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, and Max Miller did not drop out of the midterm, so this will give the Democrats a better chance. I know,
because today was the last day. He had to drop out by today, and he didn't. And now the Republicans are like, there was the guy who's head of the we always support people in the Republican Party, and it was kind of up to Max whether or not he would drop out, but he's decided to stay, and so he's a Republican, and we support Republicans because that's what we do. Oh my God! Oh my God!
Yeah, and also before they went on recess on Friday, did the Senate approve a bill that said that you have to have a photo ID to vote? Did I hear that right?
If they did, I didn't catch that, and I didn't read about it.
Yeah, I thought I heard that. I'm not sure. All right. Thank you much.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Ron. Let us go to Lake in the Hills, where Greg is on the line. Hey, Greg, how are you today?
Hey, good afternoon, Joan. Thanks for taking the call. The thing about Senator Bill Cassidy and voting for the Blanche nomination to proceed, I kind of liken it to, when Kristen Sinema gave the middle finger to the Democratic Party and Joe Biden. And in his case, he's doing the same thing. He's given the middle finger to the Democratic Party, but his is going to be known as the what's his last name? The Bill. What's his last name again? I forgot it.
Cassidy. Bill Cassidy.
The Cassidy curtsy. And in honor of his one of his mentors, Kristen Sinema. So I think that'll be a fitting name for the man who just did what he did, and the fake tears, the crocodile tears.
Yeah. Yep.
And then,
yep.
I don't know if you saw this story in the New York Times, and this is one of the reasons why I sometimes don't get newspapers, but it was about another Republican champion, Senator Chuck Grassley, 92-year-old. And the New York Times saw fit to publish an article about Grassley's 50-year-old Hoover vacuum cleaner.
I saw that. What is he named it? Was its name Beth? Like Beth, I don't know how much longer Beth's going to be around. Oh, yeah, but, God.
The thing I thought good about it is, first of all, it involved Hoover, someone who in history we could say is similar to something like a vacuum, which both suck. And one of the things that Trump wants he fears being called, he says, a Hoover. Well, maybe he should call Chuck Grassley and they could mourn and, for the failed vacuum cleaner. My final thing was what you led about. You asked about whether you didn't know if you would allow or invite Donald Trump to Joe Biden's, his wake or whatever you want to call it, and it made me think about a colleague I had, years ago. He's passed on now. But we shared some good humor over the years of about maybe 15 to 20 years of working together. And one of the things, he hated his brother-in-law. And he says, if my brother-in-law, I've already told my wife, if her brother ever comes to my wake, she goes, I want to make sure that, and he says, I'm going to set it up this way. He's going to have his casket set up so that when his brother-in-law comes in, they've got a crank on the end, and they're going to rotate it, and up's going to come his rear end, and he's going to have a cutout in the rear of his clothes.
Oh my God!
And he's going to have a sign, and he's going to say, "You can continue to kiss my."
Oh. Oh my!
Anyway, I always thought of that. I never lost that thought because it made me laugh when he told me, because he told it a lot better than I would. But that's what I think maybe Joe Biden, might do. That would be a suitable presentation for.
Greg, I might do that, and maybe you might do that, but chances are Joe Biden is going to try to be classier than that. I think that sounds like a fine idea and something that I will consider as part of my estate planning. But I think Joe and his lovely wife Jill are probably going to take the high road.
No, they're too classy and really good people. I know they wouldn't do that, but a little levity. But thank you very much, Joan. I'm gonna leave now because everybody else has got their time too.
Thank you for that. I really could use a laugh a lot of the times, and that was just delightful. Let us go to Paul, who's on the line from Seattle. Hello, Paul. How are you?
Hi, Joan. Last week we were talking about how the countries in the region, Iran and then Oman, were talking about, and we were kind of talking about that it's going to take. They're the ones who are going to have to work this thing out to end the war. And I don't think it occurred to me at the time necessarily. Maybe it did to you, but that the working it out would mean, the world community has essentially determined that Donald Trump has lost the war, and this 15-point agreement is that you pay for the damages. It really, I don't know. I was listening to Tom say this morning. I don't know why, if somebody attacked this country, killed our president and the president's wife, and destroyed. Well, we already have a leader who destroyed the White House, but destroyed our White House if it weren't the regular guy. But would we be negotiating with him? I would say we would have the upper hand. We would say, no, you pay for everything. And I think the rest of the world community agrees. The United States is going to have to pay the damages. And once they do and say no, we're not going to attack it. This was a completely unprovoked, the second unprovoked attack on Iran. The first one was last June. And this one's gone on for now, 6 months. And I think that, and we know that the Republicans are never going to agree to this, and Trump's never going to agree to it. So it's like, okay, I think the Strait of Hormuz is going to remain closed.
Yeah, well, if it's here's what I think is going to happen. We have nothing to do with the Strait of Hormuz. Iran isn't going to listen to us unless we say to Iran, okay, we'll give you $400 billion to rebuild, and we'll allow you to charge tolls or whatever. If we capitulate to Iran, then that would be one thing. But I think Iran and Oman are going to come to an agreement, and they're going to announce to the rest of the world, we have decided this is how the Strait of Hormuz is going to work from this point forward, and here we're sharing it with you, the rest of the world. It's a done deal, and we will have had nothing to do with it.
Right. Yep. I think that's right. I think that's absolutely right. And it certainly won't be in our best interest. It will be.
No.
It's not going to be. It's not going to be anything. And this was really worth it. They could say give us $500 billion to rebuild. But as I said before, if Trump was such a great negotiator, all he's done in terms of his negotiation is this threaten. I mean, he has never produced one syllable of interest-based negotiations. He could have said from the beginning, "Hey, tell you what, we'll give you $10 billion for the uranium. We'll take it," and they probably would have gone for that deal. $10 billion seems like a chump change now, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it does.
I mean, this is the most inept, incompetent boob. And Bill Cassidy is whining. And oh, by the way, that vote, at least according to Heather Cox Richardson, which I saw yesterday, she said this took place at 4:00 in the morning on Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
And no, they did not pass the SAVE Act, any part of the SAVE Act. They got the reason they did that is because they are such cowards. Not only did they do that at 4:00 in the morning to confirm Tom Blash, but they could skedaddle out of town and not have to tell Uncle Donnie that they did not pass anything in the SAVE Act because they're afraid of him too. These are the biggest weenies, these are the biggest babies, and they run our government. They're just this disgustingly spineless and gutless. It's just so. These people are. Ugh.
Yes. Ugh. I think that. I like that. I think that pretty much sums it up. Ugh.
I'm at a loss for words. The more this goes on, the less eloquent we all become. We all become more stupid.
I got a text last week from somebody who said, Joan, I heard you sigh, and I want you to know I'm right there with you. So, so there you go. We have become inarticulate.
I have to say that Heather Cox Richardson and her colleague were actually doing the same thing. Now, those are some people who are pretty articulate, and I'm like, they were pretty much going the same thing too. When I was watching it yesterday afternoon, and they're at a loss for words as well. Which it's just like this is just too much. I don't see how this. It's got to be unsustainable. There have to be laws of nature that make this unsustainable.
Yeah. Well, what are they though? I would love to find out why this is happening, and if there's a scientific explanation. Is there a formula? Is there a chemical thing we can do to erase all this? I would like that.
Yeah, I'm for erasing, for sure. This is so. But I think that it's not going to be fixed, and if Trump thinks that he's just going to keep bombing, he doesn't like and Netanyahu just dismissed out of hand the 15 points, and he's the one who dragged us all into this. This has really turned out well.
Yes, hasn't it? Aren't you proud to be an American? And don't you think Donald Trump? Oh shoot, we're into the news. Don't you think Donald Trump deserves that Nobel Peace Prize? Come on, you know you do.
Oh, well, yeah, for sure now.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
As usual, I've talked too long. We need to get to the news. We will be back with much more after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am welcoming back to our airwaves Carolyn Fiddler. She writes This Week in State House Action. It is on Substack. You can find her on all the socials. And it is a really interesting little take she has on state elections. You know, we all pay attention to Congress and who's running, for Senate and sometimes even governor, not quite as much. But the people who really affect the way you live your life on a day-to-day basis are the people that you vote into the State House. Carolyn, thanks for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be back.
It is delightful. Now, I'm just as guilty as what I just said about paying attention to the really high-profile races and not looking at the lesser races as much as I would like to. You wrote about the recent primary elections in Michigan, and you focused on a number of the state house races and what was at stake. Can you walk us through that and tell us who won and who didn't and what it might mean?
Yeah, I'd be absolutely delighted. I know there was a lot of discussion last week around the U.S. Senate primary in Michigan, which is obviously very important as well. And that was a squeaker that was really, really interesting. But another important set of races that are happening this fall are for the Michigan state legislature. Democrats want to flip that state house back to majority control, and Democrats want to make sure they ideally expand their majority in the state Senate, which is very, very, very narrow. And so last week's primaries were setting all of that up for the fall. And there were some interesting like Dem on Dem action in safe blue seats. And there was some really interesting action in some of the swingier seats in the legislature that are actually going to determine who is in charge after November.
And so what's the takeaway? What's the big picture here?
I would say the takeaway is that, we saw this up ballot too. There's a lot of good unity after these contentious primaries. Even the ones down ballot got pretty spicy in some places. But everyone came together afterwards, and everyone is very clear-eyed about what needs to be done to make sure that Democrats are able to expand their power in the state legislature in November. There was one race that became almost like a weird sort of AIPAC / Michigan state utility company proxy fight. The utility companies are certainly a little anxious about all this discussion about affordability, because it turns out there are a lot of, depending on the state, there are things that state lawmakers can do to help keep prices down or even reduce prices in terms of what people are paying for their electricity, which everyone is very understandably worried about these days. Just like many other states, Michigan is wrestling with data centers and how many of those to allow and what that needs to look like to keep the environment safe and to keep people from paying too much for electricity and water and all of that. And there were also some really interesting contests to give us some Republican candidates in very swing seats. I would say that one of the candidates that came out of the Republican primary to run in probably the state's most Republican seat in the state Senate that's currently held by a Democrat. The Republicans did not get their strongest candidate out of that. So it's entirely possible that that Democrats are well poised to keep that majority in the state Senate this fall because of outcomes like that. We'll see. I'm sure they, being Republicans, are going to throw a lot of money on flipping the state Senate and keeping their control of the state House. So there's, fewer than 90 days left between now and Election Day.
I believe it's 83, but who's counting?
I know. I'm trying to keep it to round numbers in my head because that's less scary to me than like 83.
Carolyn, you mentioned AIPAC. In Illinois, perhaps surprisingly, AIPAC was a negative for a lot of candidates. A lot of the candidates who took AIPAC money were denigrated for doing that, and many of them lost. How would you say that is? Would you say that's reflective of the rest of the country, or were we an anomaly?
I don't think that Illinois was an anomaly, but that doesn't mean that played out the exact same way everywhere. There was one primary that AIPAC did kind of wade into in a lower key way. AIPAC is not as invested in state politics as some other groups. They're certainly invested in national politics, but there was that kind of interplay of those issues and like who is getting large sums of money from what kind of groups. And there was a candidate in a primary that was supported by donors who also tend to support AIPAC. And he was also supported by a PAC that was funded by one of the state utilities. And he came out ahead. So that's going to mean really, and it's a safely blue district. So he's going to get elected. He's going to become a member of the state house and the state Senate. And and so it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays within the caucus after November, after everyone's inaugurated for session next year, and see how that fits into Democrats' affordability priorities and keeping rates down for folks in Michigan, because Democrats are certainly very mindful of that. And there was one more kind of interesting primary in Michigan, if I can
Sure. You have the floor.
Out a little bit longer about Michigan primaries. So there was this one state house race where this guy named Frank Liberati was running to fill his brother's state house seat. His brother's retiring, but his brother being a Democrat. Sorry, these are all Democrats. His brother cast a lousy vote about banning trans girls from kids' sports. So that's riled up a lot of Democrats. And it's not a super blue district, but it's certainly a Dem leaning district for sure. So this remarkable transgender woman stepped up to run, Joanna Whaley, and she was motivated by this vote this guy took to run. But this guy, Mr. Liberati, his brother, who was running to try and keep the seat in the family, within the family, so to speak, filed a complaint against Joanna Whaley, alleging that she should be disqualified from the ballot, basically because she didn't include her dead name on her campaign filing, her paperwork to run for office. So that was kind of lousy. He lost the complaint. The complaint was completely thrown out. Joanna remained on the ballot, and she won that primary handily last week. So that was nice to see. And
that's always nice to hear.
Yeah, and it's very likely. Again, the seat is not a gimme, but it's definitely a lean Dem seat, and so it's very likely that Michigan will have its first transgender woman legislator next year. Hopefully.
Very cool. Very interesting.
She's remarkable and has a tremendous story. She was a megachurch pastor for a long time.
Wow.
She's absolutely been through it.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah. Tomorrow you're probably aware of this. Tomorrow, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Alabama, Vermont, and Connecticut are all holding primaries. Anything that you think we should be particularly paying attention to there?
Well, I'm really, really excited about the Wisconsin legislature this fall. Democrats have a chance to, for the first time in, we're talking at least 16 years now, to win majorities in the state assembly and in the state Senate. Half of the state Senate is up. Democrats made inroads 2 years ago when the other half of the state Senate was up. So they were hoping to continue to make inroads towards a majority in that state Senate, and they're also hoping to flip the state assembly to Democratic control. This is a real deep cut. A few years back, there was this big state Supreme Court case about redistricting. Republicans gerrymandered the crap out of that state, and the state Supreme Court said, actually, this violates the state constitution. You can't do that. You have to redraw your districts in a way that sucks less. And so they did. The maps are not like, they're certainly not friendly towards Democrats necessarily, but they're the least hostile maps that Democrats have had in Wisconsin since 2010. So that is the big push for this fall in Wisconsin. Of course, there's a governor's race. The attorney general there is running for re-election. He's great, Josh Kaul, we're all very excited to see Democrats succeed at every level of the ballot in Wisconsin.
Okie dokie. We've made copious notes of what you've just said, and it will guide us over the next couple of days. Carolyn, we need to take a break, but when we come back, another one of your posts, and I'm sorry I don't have the date when this one aired, but you talked about what could potentially happen, the challenges that we could potentially face in the midterms and Trump's attempt to steal them. I want to talk more about that when we come back from a break. I'm talking to Caroline Fiddler. This week in State House Action. You should be reading it. We'll be back after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
Caroline Fiddler has a newsletter, This Week in State House Action. You can find it everywhere. I like to read it on Substack, but she is also on most of the socials as well. And Caroline, recently you posted something about how Trump might steal the midterms. I shared last week a sound clip from Congressman Jim Himes, who was on one of the cable network shows and talking about they were asking him about, the voter suppression and all this other stuff. And he said, here's the scenario that I think is most likely. The vote takes place. The vote takes place, and we're starting to get the returns. And suddenly we see Jon Ossoff has won. And it looks like, the Democrats definitely have the House. Maybe it looks like they might be making some inroads in the Senate. And then Donald Trump goes on television and claims that someone, whether one of the suggestions was it was Maduro's brother, comes out and says, well, we're Venezuela and we can tell you right now, we interfered with those voting machines. We're telling you right now, this is not a free and fair election. And that then would then use that to say we got to throw all these results out. It clearly was not a free and fair election. Jim Himes said that, I think, is a much more likely scenario than some of the other things, like having ICE show up at polling places. And he said that he believes that last speech Trump gave, where he was mad that all the networks didn't cover it in full, that he was laying the groundwork for that. Like, we know that there's foreign actors invading our election system, and that's what he's going to do after the fact. Especially, he apparently has a real bug up his butt about Jon Ossoff. And if this all looks like it's going the Democrats' way, then he's going to step in and say, I've got proof it's phony baloney, and we have to just negate this. What do you think is the most likely way that he will mess with the midterms? Because we all know he's going to do something, and maybe more than one something.
Yeah, no, I wish you were being alarmist, but you absolutely are not being alarmist at all. He is absolutely planning he's already low-key messing with the midterms. He is planning to increase the number of ways in which he will be messing with the midterms. I think we're going to see some real creativity, like the bad kind, in terms of the things he is going to, pull out of his butt to do to try and discredit election results. I think that Himes' theory is absolutely colorable. I don't think anything, I'm not sure really anything is off the table here. I think that if there is some sort of federal lever of power that he can pull to just set some things on fire, he's absolutely going to do it, because he is terrified of being held accountable. And he understands that Americans and members of Congress and other folks are really tired of seeing him get away with everything he's getting away with, because obviously Republicans in Congress are doing jack. So he is going to things that pretty much, I think he might do anything we can imagine. And I think he's going to do some things that we might not even be able to imagine. But the thing is, I hope that I need folks to know that, first of all, American elections, your elections in your state and elections everywhere are incredibly secure. They're incredibly safe and secure. Everyone's ballot is going to count. That I think I love that Jim Hyams is worried about this, and he is correct to be raising the alarm about it 100%. But I also think it's incumbent upon him and other members of Congress and pretty much anyone with a bully pulpit to remind Americans that no matter what Donald Trump says, our elections are safe and secure. And anything to mess with that is going to be Trump's doing and no one else's. Trump is the one trying to make our elections not safe and not secure, because they absolutely are right now. Our elections are incredibly well run and incredibly secure, and Trump is the one who's putting that in danger.
I don't know if state officials were shocked and surprised, but I was shocked and surprised when Tulsi Gabbard and the FBI showed up in Georgia and started taking election materials.
Yeah.
And if that is the way Trump wants to say the midterms were crooked, they were invalid, if the FBI shows up at state boards of election, can governors just say, no, go away, you're not allowed here? How do we fight that? Because I know attorneys general are getting ready and that they sort of pre-write a lot of motions. If they think the administration is going to do something, they already figure out how they can counter it. They write it up. So if it happens, they can be in court within hours instead of within days. But I don't know how you would fight if the FBI shows up.
That is a dicey thing, especially in a state like Georgia, where there are no statewide Democratic elected officials at this point who would have any influence over this process. We do know that not every statewide Republican in Georgia buys into the big lie, buys into Trump's trash. So I think there is a bit of a backstop there. I think that Republicans in Georgia want to win elections and won't want all their ballots stolen and thrown out and things like that, because they have races to win there too. It's not just about the U.S. Senate race. So there are some built-in backstops that I hope will help people sleep a little bit better at night. But attorneys general everywhere are super focused on making sure that they are ready to counteract as quickly as humanly possible all of the antics that Trump is going to pull. And again, I think it is impossible to be too alarmist about this.
I agree with you 100%. And I think if Trump just goes on TV and says, oh, my friends in Venezuela are admitting that they hacked the voting machines, and if he just goes on television and says something, I don't think we're in too much of a crisis, because I'm pretty sure that nobody believes what he says. Even his followers are kind of starting to wonder if what he says is right. But if he sends out the FBI, and under Kash Patel, Kash Patel, like Todd Blanche, yes, sir. How high shall I jump, sir? Shall I jump again, sir? Is just going to do it. And I think that is, do you call out the National Guard? Do they go to war with the FBI? I mean, how does that happen? What, do you just lock up the doors and hope that they don't break down the door? I don't know how you fight what once was a respected government agency.
Yeah, no, having the FBI roll up and just steal ballots would be seen as just stealing ballots. And I think that, and I know that, again, I know there are a lot of complaints among progressives about the media. And I do think the media has not been as effective as they need to have been about calling out Trump when he lies about things. But I think that it's incumbent upon, again, anyone with a bully pulpit to push the media to not both sides the crazy things that Trump is saying and is going to say about elections. His claims will be just things he makes up, demonstrably not true things. And it is very important that when this stuff is getting covered by the media, that the media says, hey, Trump said this, there's nothing that shows that this is the case. This is a thing that Trump has said, but there's nothing to back it up. And in terms of who's versus the FBI rolling in to steal ballots, I think that the Georgia Board of Elections, there is a Democrat still on that body, thankfully. In fact, I know her. She's amazing and she's very smart. But she is getting ready. She is thinking about what she can do to help physically keep ballots safe from getting stolen. These attorneys general are already queued up these motions and these show causes and lawsuits to make sure that these ballots aren't absconded with and suddenly mysteriously disappear. Again, because our elections are safe and secure, and Trump is the one who is trying to make them not that. We're in for a really interesting November, I think, and not in a fun way.
Sure.
Except for insofar as I do believe Democrats are going to perform pretty strongly this November.
I think so too. And real quick, because we only have a minute left. In your post about the midterms, you have a link to Power the Polls. Real quick, tell people about that.
One of the greatest things that you can do, just as a human being out there in the world, to get involved in your local elections process, to not just to help these people out and be civic duty awesome, but also to make yourself feel better about how your own elections are run, to raise your own awareness, is to go to powerthepolls.com. And that website will connect you to your local registrar, your local polling place and polling staff and your local election staff, and you can get plugged in with them and locally, be a poll worker, be a poll watcher. It's a great way to get started and get involved in this process, because one thing that elected officials always they need more folks out there to help them with the work of administering elections. We want billions and billions. We want as many people to vote as possible, obviously, and it takes resources including people to help facilitate that. So if folks want to get involved and are able to help out on election day or in early voting in your state, if that's available, check out powerthepolls.com. It's a great way to get plugged in. Another way to plug in is to connect with a local campaign or your state party. They're going to have volunteering opportunities for you as well. There are many ways to get involved.
And another way to plug in is to sign up for This Week in State House Action, the newsletter that will keep you up to speed on everything you need to know what's going on in the states. Carolyn, thank you so much for being here. It is always a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy coming.
We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We are joined now with Ray LaHood, former U.S. Secretary of Transportation. And the reason that I wanted to talk to Ray LaHood is I'm on the list for, I think it's the City Club of Chicago, and he's going to be a part of a discussion about bipartisanship. For those of you who are young, that word means that people on both sides of the aisle used to work together. They would find issues that they could support, whether you were a Republican or a Democrat, and they would try to promote and pass legislation that would fix things or create new things that they felt should be there. Bipartisan means both sides of the aisle. I know it's not something, if you're young, you've seen in your lifetime, but it used to exist. And Ray is going to be talking about it. Ray, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for including me in your show again. Appreciate it.
It is always a pleasure. Now, how are you going to, what is going to be a part of this talk? Are you going to tell the audience what you remember about the days when there was bipartisanship? Do you have a plan for how we might bring it back? Talk to me about this.
Well, it's going to be myself and Nikki Budzinski. Congresswoman Budzinski represents a congressional district in central and southern Illinois. And she asked if I would do this program with her because I assumed the responsibility of running the Edgar Fellows program, which is one of the preeminent bipartisan programs in Illinois, and one that where we just concluded in Champaign, Illinois, on the University of Illinois campus with 40 Edgar Fellows talking, listening to speakers and talking among one another about how to work together and to make things happen together. And I think what the 40 fellows discovered was something that is not really something that people think about. Is there's a lot more bipartisanship that goes on in Congress and in Springfield than gets reported, and a lot more bipartisanship that leads to solutions for problems than actually gets reported. And this was a part of what the Edgar Fellows heard during their week-long week together in Champaign on the University of Illinois campus.
I would assume that the way you bring about bipartisanship might be different in a state legislature rather than in Congress. Not necessarily because the issues are so much different, but in Congress, there is so much more of a spotlight. I mean, there have been times when Mike Johnson, the leader of the majority in the House of Representatives, has been rumored to tell people that if anything is proposed by a Democrat, that has to be, you can't vote for it. You cannot vote for it. Now, that would seem not to be true, since the Congress, on a bipartisan basis, put a housing bill together and then voted for it, and it became law. But I mean, that bill got so much attention, I think, Ray, because it was such an exception to the way politics has been going. It was like, oh my God, look, they worked together. Oh my God. It stood out because of its rarity. I don't know what we do with that, Ray.
I do think there is a lot of bipartisanship that goes on within the Transportation Committee in the House. There's an enormous amount of bipartisanship that goes on among the members of the House Intelligence Committee and the work that they do to keep our country safe and keep the world safe, and work with people from the CIA and the National Security Council and National Security Agency. Those kinds of bipartisan solutions that are really debated and really carried out really don't get the attention. The one that you mentioned, Joan, is quite exceptional. The housing bill that passed both the House and Senate. In the House, well over 370 votes. In the Senate, I think 86 or 87 votes out of the 100 senators. But it was work that was done the old-fashioned way, senators and House members sitting down, talking about their differences and reaching agreement. And we know that housing is one of the biggest issues, affordable housing, one of the biggest issues facing Americans today. And that was something where Congress worked together. So it does happen. It happened with a major piece of legislation, and it happens a lot in the Transportation Committee, in the Intelligence Committee, in the Agriculture Committee, committees where people just sit down and talk about their differences and come to compromise. I think the one thing that's important, Joan, to mention is, and this is something that we emphasize a great deal at the Edgar Fellows program, and that is compromise is not a bad word. Our system is based on compromise. Our system of solving problems is based on compromise. And when members do it on their own, ignore their leaders, and just get the work done, then the American people benefit from that.
You know, Ray, I can't expect you to get inside anybody's head and figure out what they were thinking. But housing was one of the areas that Donald Trump campaigned on, that there was going to be some reform. his own party came up with this bipartisan bill. It, like you say, passed both houses. And then Donald Trump refused to sign it, sort of went away. He didn't veto it, but he didn't sign it. So after a certain amount of time, if the president doesn't sign a bill but doesn't veto it, it becomes law automatically. That politically, was there a political reason for that I missed or that I don't understand?
Joan, you're very well informed, and you know the reason that Trump didn't sign the housing bill, even though he supported it, was because he wanted the Congress to pass the SAVE Act, the bill that would require identification for people to vote and really get into the business of having the federal government manage elections rather than local officials or state officials. And we know that across America, when there's an election, in my hometown of Peoria, the elections are conducted by Peoria County officials, people that are charged with that responsibility. We've had no issues, no controversies, no problems with our elections over the years. And that's true of almost every county in the country. But because Trump has got this burr under his saddle in terms of wanting the Congress to pass election reform, he was not willing to go along with a very bipartisan bill that will allow for affordable housing, and it was done in a bipartisan way. So he let it pass without his signature.
Did you ever have a problem getting the administration you were a part of to trust your judgment or believe in what you were saying? And part of the reason I'm asking that is relates to the SAVE Act, because from everything that's been widely reported, leader of the Senate, John Thune, has repeatedly told the White House that there are not the votes to pass the SAVE Act. He's repeatedly told the White House there aren't the votes to get rid of the filibuster because Donald Trump seems to think that that's a magic trick that will get the SAVE Act passed. But it doesn't seem like what he is saying is having any impact. Is that normal? Did you ever have, when you were Secretary of Transportation, did they ever look at you and say, oh, Ray, that's not right, that's not true? We know you can do different. We know you can do better. Is that normal politics?
Well, look, Trump does things a lot different than most other administrations, no question about it. When I worked with President Obama for 4.5 years as his Secretary of Transportation, we worked hand in glove. We were in constant communication about his priorities for transportation, included high-speed rail, included money for transit, money for highways. We emphasized a great deal safety, particularly in every mode of transportation, on the roads, in the air, on buses, and we work closely with every stakeholder in transportation. They knew what President Obama's priorities were when it came to transportation, and we worked very well together. This administration does their own thing, and I think that President Trump obviously has a very good relationship with Speaker Johnson. They get along together very well, and President Trump would like for the Senate leadership to do away with the filibuster, which would make 60 votes, the number of votes that are needed to pass the SAVE Act. And Senator Thune knows there aren't the votes in the Senate to get rid of the filibuster, and there aren't the votes in the Senate to pass this legislation. And it's very, very difficult conversations that he has had with the president and made it clear. And other people in the Republican Party have had difficult conversations with President Trump, but he wants it his way. And his way just simply is not going to work when it comes to the SAVE Act.
I'm talking to former Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood. We are going to take a break, and we're going to be back with much more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
On August 27th, that's a Thursday at the end of the month. I have to check these things, Ray, because I get confused. It is a Thursday, August 27th. Nikki Budzinski and former U.S. Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood are going to get together for an event put on by the City Club of Chicago. And they are going to talk about bipartisanship and, frankly, whether or not it is still possible today. Now, Ray, having attended these luncheons before, I know that before you guys take questions, you both get a chance to just talk and talk about the issue and how you want to frame it. Give us, if you don't mind, a little bit of a preview of what those remarks are going to be like from you.
Well, thank you, Joan. Again, thanks for having me on your show today. I'm going to talk about the Edgar Fellows Program. We just finished our 14th year, a group of 40 elected officials, mayors, county board people, state reps, state senators, people that work in the governor's office and other places around Illinois, got together and listened to speakers talk about how to make things happen, how to get things done. Compromise is not a bad word. People need to work together if they want to make a difference in the important jobs that they have. And mentoring is also a big part of the message that I delivered at the Edgar Fellows Program. The importance of people in leadership, finding those that they work with and come in contact with, giving them the kind of opportunities to learn from leaders and to learn how to be a leader. So not only does the Edgar Fellows Program really promote the idea of leadership and vision, it also promotes the idea of mentoring others who will follow on once you decide as an elected or appointed official to move on to other opportunities.
What are the requirements to be eligible for an Edgar Fellowship?
For this class, again, we picked 40 people. We had 150 people who were recommended, and we go through the list. Really, the only requirement is to be involved in some way, shape, or form in public service as an elected representative or senator or mayor or county board person, or someone who works in government, may work for a congressman, may be in Congress. This year we had 2 Congress people speak. The governor spoke. So the major number one requirement, Joan, is that they be involved in public service and active in public service.
You know, something that I've observed is it seems it's always been difficult and required a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of heart and soul to get elected to an office. But these days, you know, the people who are running now grew up with social media as a part of their life. You know, when they were in high school or college or younger, just like sort of like Graham Plattner before he finally exploded, that it seems like as difficult as it was before. And certainly the opposition would do research and ways to come after you or find your weaknesses. Now it seems like everybody is under such a microscope that, to me, honestly, it's amazing that anybody runs for office anymore, Ray. Do I sound like an old fogey?
Well, look, when I ran in '94 for Congress, there weren't cell phones. People were using Blackberries, and there was no social media. And what's happened over the last several years, social media has had a huge, huge impact on politics, on running for office. You can say anything about anybody, not be accountable for it, not have to look them in the eye, not have to really confront somebody face to face. Those days are gone. And what we see happening are people saying stupid, ridiculous, untrue things about their opponents and other people and people in politics, people they don't like, and there simply is no accountability for any of it. I think the other thing, Joan, that's impacted politics today is the decline of people's ability to really read newspapers, the decline of newspapers
Yeah.
where people can actually go and read in depth on an issue or a particular subject simply doesn't exist today. There are three, in my opinion, newspapers that really go in depth. One, Wall Street Journal; two, New York Times; excuse me; three, Washington Post to a lesser extent. I think in Chicago, Chicago Cranes is very, very good. Appreciate the way they try and get in depth on issues. But you've seen the decline of papers like the Chicago Tribune, the Chicago Sun-Times, and in hometowns all across America, like the one that I live in Peoria. Our newspaper is absolutely nothing and goes in depth on absolutely nothing. And so I think the decline of people's ability to really read about issues and the uptick in the ability of people to go on AI, to use social media in a way that degrades people is playing a big role in politics and public service today.
I couldn't agree with you more. And do you see, well, first of all, let me share with you, we have a text line and people can text in and comment on discussions. And I've gotten some texters who want me to say that it just seems when politicians talk about compromise, to them, it seems like they want Democrats to compromise, but never Republicans compromise. And that sometimes compromise looks like Democrats just giving in, and that people are really upset about this, that right now, at least in the eyes of some people, bipartisanship doesn't look like two different sides coming together. It looks like one side dominating the other and getting them to fold. What would you say to those listeners who've texted that in?
Yeah, well, that simply wasn't true with the housing bill. Democrats and Republicans came together, not only in the House of Representatives with over 370 votes, but in the United States Senate with, I think, 86 or 87 votes. That means that Democrats and Republicans came together. They worked together. They compromised. They talked to one another. They worked through the issues. And the American people benefited by the fact that now there is an affordable housing bill that will affect every American and will help every American. So there are lots of situations like that, Joan. I mentioned transportation is a very bipartisan issue. Lots of things are worked out between Republicans and Democrats. Compromise is carried out by Republicans and Democrats. So it's not just a one-party situation, it's both parties.
Ray, if you were a young man coming up today, do you think you'd get into politics?
I think politics and public service does allow you to be involved. I encourage people to do it. I encourage young people to do it. It's a calling that requires a good deal of patience, a good deal of ability to work with people of all political stripes and political points of view. And I think if you understand going in that no one person gets their own way and that you have to work with others of different political points of view, you can make a difference. You can make a difference in people's lives, in solving problems, and really having some involvement in making a difference.
If I told you that I was interested in running for office, what would be the advice you would give to me other than you're too old, go away?
Well, one thing I would say, and what I do say to people who want to get involved in politics, work in somebody else's campaign. Get to know the people that are involved in politics. Get to know how the process works in terms of electability. Become somebody who works for somebody else, volunteers for somebody else. Get to know the system. And then people will get to know you, and they'll know your sincerity, they'll know your interest, and you can learn an awful lot by getting involved in someone else's campaign or somebody else's service. And that's the way to really learn the system. And if you do that, you will come away with an understanding of how the system works and how you can become involved.
Is that why we see so many established politicians backing their chiefs of staff when they decide to run for office? Because it's somebody that they know has learned the system and knows how things work and knows what the job entails? Because it does seem like that is one really strong path if you want to run for elected life, is come up through somebody's system and then get their backing.
Well, Joan, that's right. I was 17 and a half years congressional staffer for two different congressmen before I ran for office. And when I did run in '94 to succeed Bob Michel, I knew many of the people in my congressional district for the work that I had done, the service that I had provided, the assistance that I had provided. I knew a lot of the political people, and it held me in very good stead in 1994 when I won the seat that was being vacated by Bob Michel. That experience was invaluable in my ability to get elected and to say to people, I do have the experience and the knowledge to make a difference and to make things work.
Ray LaHood, thank you so much for joining us. Remember, folks, August 27th, Ray and Nikki Budzinski are going to be speaking at the City Club of Chicago. You don't have to be a member to attend. Just look it up online and you can save yourself a spot. Ray, thank you so much for joining me.
I hope I'll see you there, Joan. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, you know, the bad
to be
thing
on your
is,
show.
and you should talk to these people, because I work way far north and I'm on in the afternoon, the only way I can go to the City Club is I have to take a day off. And
Okay.
yeah, that's so I make my apologies right now for the fact that I won't be there.
Well, thank you for allowing me to come on and talk about what I'm going to talk about that day. Appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you too. Thanks for being here. We are going to take a break for news, and we're going to be back with much more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am very happy to welcome back to our airwaves Peter Giangreco. He is with the strategy group, though he is desperately trying to retire and seems to be utterly unable to. And so he is still up to his neck in politics, which is what we love. Hello, Peter. How are you?
Hey, Joan. I'm doing well. How about you?
That is good to hear. I am. I have to think about that. Am I doing well? I think so. I think so. I'm not really sure. I have found that the best way to get through this current political era is just simply to feel nothing, and that's working for me. That's working for me.
I think it's a good play. You know?
Well, it's probably not healthy, but you know, we do what we can.
Well,
I wanted to.
If you never love, you'll never have your heart broken, right?
There you go. I wanted to talk to you about the primaries coming up. Now, for those of you who have not heard my conversations with Mr. Giangreco before, he is very, very close to one Amy Klobuchar, who is at this moment the front runner to win the Democratic nomination to be on the ballot for governor. As a matter of fact, when I've been reading about this race, most of the articles I read don't even mention the other Democrats who are on the ballot, because I think everybody kind of considers Amy to be the Democratic lock on this. Would you agree?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Minnesota, President Trump absolutely obsesses about Minnesota more than any other state because he can't believe he lost it every time he's run. But it's always been the closest state that he's lost. And so he has this weird obsession with Minnesota. He has endorsed Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, who's one of the great election denier nutcases on the planet. And so you have this looming, almost $400 million war chest. If Donald Trump spends that in Minnesota, if Mike Lindell wins the primary, if those two things happen, it could be more competitive than you think, even with a strong candidate like Amy Klobuchar.
No, I cannot take Mike Lindell seriously. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That puts you in the same bed as a lot of Minnesota voters who clearly dislike Lindell a lot more than they dislike the other major candidates for governor on the Republican side. So it should be interesting. But, I think a lot of people think because Minnesota's gone for every Democrat going back to Walter Mondale in '84, that it's a deep blue state. It's not. It's looking more like Wisconsin every cycle. But we've run good candidates there, and Democrats keep winning. So, but you have a divided legislature, and you've got the ongoing fraud scandal that has looms over everything in the state. So there's a lot of competing factors going on. There's also, of course, what ICE did to Minnesota and attacking people, killing 2 protesters. So there have been hugely negative stories that have shaped both. The Republicans want the race to be about fraud. The Democrats would rather have it be about ICE. But I think in the middle are the voters who say, we just want stuff to cost less.
Now, there's a businessman and the Minnesota House Speaker are also on the Republican side. I don't know about the businessman, Kendall Qualls, but I would think that a lot of people would have some degree of name recognition with Lisa DeMuth, who is the Speaker of the House, and that would give her, I would have guessed that even with Trump's endorsement of Mike Lindell, that Lisa would be a strong candidate. Yes? No?
I think so. I mean, Damith does try to present herself as a little more nuanced, although on issues like abortion, you can't get to the right of Lisa DeMuth. Qualls did win the Republican convention, but just doesn't have the money to compete. So I think he was sort of the grassroots candidate at one point. Damith might be the more establishment candidate. And then there's just Lindell, who's like on another planet. But with President Trump's endorsement, all things are possible. So really, it's probably a race between Damith and Lindell at this point. And you probably got to give Lindell the advantage, just given the fact that I think Trump's won 98% of the primaries he's endorsed in.
Is he going to be giving everyone who votes for him a pillow?
He tried to. He was handing them out at a parade and got hit with a campaign finance violation. I guess they cost like $35 each, and he was giving away for free. And you can't do that. You can't literally buy people's votes. Not even in Chicago is that legal. So.
Well, he should have stuck to the usual, giving out candy or giving out, plastic necklaces. But right. I mean, I'm thinking like Oprah, you get a pillow and you get a pillow and you get a pillow. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bizarre thing to fling out at a parade, but he's a bizarre guy.
He really is. He's a nut job, if I do say so myself.
Well, he has an interesting story because actually when you put him on camera and he talks about overcoming drug addiction and, some of the charitable work that he does, he almost sounds credible and normal. It's just, I think a lot of people in Minnesota have already made up their minds about him. But listen, if the president is sitting on $400 million, which he is, a president who is obsessed about Minnesota and loves election deniers like Mike Lindell, you could see that Trump money come off the sidelines, and then the governor's race becomes a little more competitive. The question becomes who runs in the U.S. Senate race, and I think that's probably what you want to talk about some more here. Is what's going to happen in that Senate race, and how does it affect the general election, right?
Peter Giangreco could be a host here because he understands how the subject matter flows. However, he doesn't realize we have to take a break right now. But we will get. Yeah, we will
It was
get
coming
to
about break time. I just felt it in my bones.
Yeah, I should send you an email so you can have a clock so you know when I'm gonna stop the conversation for a moment. We are going to take a break. We are going to be back with Peter Giangreco's next topic when we come right back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am talking with Peter Giangreco from the Strategy Group. We were talking about the race, the primary race in Minnesota for governor. And now he's decided we're going to talk about the primary race for Senate in Minnesota. So please take it away. It's your show.
The two candidates there's Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, who's seen as the more progressive candidate, and Congresswoman Angie Craig, who's won over and over and over again in one of the most swing districts in the whole country. And that sets up the dynamic is, sort of the more progressive candidate, the one that's more, out there on cutting aid to Israel and such. And then you've got Craig, who's actually won in tough areas before. So you've got a candidate that's arguing electability against a candidate that's, kind of really playing to the progressive left in the primary here. The early polling had a lot of polls had Flanagan pretty far ahead, but the as we mentioned earlier, the two dominant sort of Minnesota issues this cycle. One was obviously what happened when ICE came and laid siege in Minneapolis and St. Paul and other places. And Alex Preddy, Renee Good were murdered by ICE. Peggy Flanagan has jumped on that, has attacked Angie Craig for voting for the Lake and Riley Act, which is a separate issue to crack down on what the Republicans would call illegal immigration. So that's been the dynamic as Flanagan attacking Craig for being too Republican on immigration. But a funny thing's happened as we've gotten closer and closer to the election, which is the polls have gotten closer and closer. So I think if the Lincoln Riley attack were, a deal breaker, I think you'd see Flanagan maintaining those double-digit leads. We haven't seen a poll. There have been polls by Survey USA, which is an independent polling firm that they do it for some of the Minneapolis TV stations, that has Craig ahead or tied. You've had PPP polling, which is being put out by the super PAC that's supporting Flanagan, that still has her with a lead, though not as big as some of the ones we saw before. So I think it's close. I think it's easy to say that this is a race that could go either way. Flanagan supporters say you want her on the ticket because she'll bring out progressives. What Craig's folks are saying is you want somebody who's electable and isn't as closely tied to the fraud scandal that's really taking down Governor Walz's numbers. She's the lieutenant governor. She was, on her watch, you've had, I think, 70 convictions now. This is not just a creation of the right. There actually been convictions. And the Republicans love this issue because it's like a trifecta. It's big government spending that goes to working poor people, and a lot of the people who've been convicted are from the Somali community. So this is like, the Republicans love this because they get to race bait and to run against government spending. That's been sort of the dominant Republican issue. A lot of the Democrats are talking about what ICE did. Where the voters are is they want things to cost less. Yeah. And so you have a back and forth in the primary that maybe doesn't align with where general election voters are, which, yes, they care about the fraud scandal and they want to crack down on, but they're mostly care about grocery prices, gas prices, housing prices, and what you're going to do about them. So that's kind of the dynamic of the race here.
Peter, it's always seemed to me that candidates do private polling that oftentimes you learn about it after the fact, but oftentimes it seems that the polling that candidates do and keep private seems to be more accurate than the polling that is released to the public. And how do you make sure what has to take place for you to trust a poll? I mean, for example, in Michigan, the latest polling before the race said that El Sayed was going to win by, it was going to be a rout. He was going to win by 5 points or more. And as you know, it turned into a very, very close race that was decided by just about a percentage point. So how do you know when polling is good? And do you have private companies you trust more than the ones that are public?
Oh, absolutely. Any poll you pay for inside a campaign is just going to have much more rigor. It costs a lot more to do them because a lot of them will, instead of just taking anybody who comes in, they will call and call and call a certain area looking for a certain kind of voter, and that takes more money. They'll put out more ads to get text to web, and those ads cost money because they will cluster their surveys and make sure that I'm not just getting, because look, a white woman in the Iron Range is a lot different than a white woman in St. Paul. And internal polling, whether it's a Republican pollster or a Democratic pollster, they're going to spend a lot more time and a lot more money finding exactly the kind of people they want in each of their samples, whether they're clustered samples or otherwise. And whereas a PPP poll or a Survey USA poll, some of which have both done numbers in Minneapolis that are public, they don't spend that money. They don't have that kind of rigor. So you've got a public policy poll, PPP, which was pretty accurate in the Illinois primaries, but they've got Flanagan up 14. At the same time, you've got Survey USA that has the race even. And I would probably bet that Survey USA is probably closer to it because the other thing you see is Peggy Flanagan, her last poll that she put out from GQR, another really good polling firm, had her up 17 in May. They haven't released any of their polling since then. At the same time, Global Strategy Group, which was Angie Craig's super PAC, had Craig up 1. So you've got, even among the blue chip pollsters that spend a lot of money to get the samples right, you have wildly divergent numbers in here. But the trend seems to be that Flanagan's early lead is she's kind of running out of gas. Public policy polling, they had her up 30, then they had her up 11, then they had her up 7. You're seeing a trend line here. Then all of a sudden they have her up 14, and that 14 feels like the outlier of all the June and July polls that either have Craig ahead, have it even, or Flanagan with a diminished lead. So what you do want to look for out of public polling is that trend line. And PPP's numbers went from 30 to 7 in terms of Flanagan's lead. Yes, they had one more poll that popped out in July that had her up 14, but that seems counterintuitive when all the other polling has things narrowing. So this is probably a toss-up race. The good news in Minnesota, unlike Michigan, unlike Wisconsin, is Angie Craig, Peggy Flanagan, these are both Democrats that can win in the fall, whereas in Michigan, there's been pretty decent general election polling that showed that Haley Stevens was the stronger candidate over Abdul El-Sayed. And so you've got a nominee who only won by a point, who's the weaker general election candidate. And you're already seeing him having to try to disavow, the sit down he did with Hassan Piker. That's been the whole conversation in the race since the primary. And so the question becomes, do we have an El Said or a Francesca Hong in Minnesota? I think the answer is no. I think most people would think that Craig is the more electable candidate, but Peggy Flanagan's a good candidate. We're not going to, I don't think people are going to freak out like they are in Michigan or freak out like they should in Wisconsin if the far left candidate wins. Here, you can see a path for either one of them to win. They each have their strengths and weaknesses. Craig's probably more electable. Flanagan might bring out more progressives. So I don't think we have a disaster scenario in Minneapolis like we have brewing in Wisconsin.
I do want to talk more about Wisconsin later, but you mentioned a clustered sample. What is that, Peter?
So there are some pollsters that they not only want, the basic age, gender, race numbers to look like the electorate. They actually physically cluster their sample, and if this is a poll in Ohio, they'll call the same neighborhood on the east side of Ohio to find, a woman over 65 and say Shaker Heights or Cleveland Heights, which is going to be a more progressive area, instead of just taking any, older white woman that might be from Akron or from Southern Ohio, which are much more swing or much more red places. They actually cluster the places so that they end up with a sample that looks more like the electorate, both geographically as well as demographically. And they use some of the modeling that we have to try to figure out who's Democrat, who's a Republican. That's all part of these clusters. And they'll spend a lot more money dialing those places, and they'll spend a lot more money, placing ads so that, hey, will you come do this survey? Click on this link. They'll do more calls, they'll do more links into these areas, and they will fill up these clusters so that you get a more, a statistically more sound sample than if you just take whoever comes walking in the door.
You mentioned that pollsters run ads. Is that because I know that when Nate Silver had his first big bomb, and this was years ago, and it was like, oh, well, it's really hard to get people's cell phone numbers, and we're used to calling landlines, and, that really didn't give us the proper spread that we needed. Is that still true, that it's hard to get people by phone? And if so, my daughter tells me Facebook is for old people. So if you want old people, do you place some kind of ad on Facebook that says, what? Hey, want to have your voice heard? Take this survey or something like that?
Yeah, it's a lot of text to phones. I mean, people live on their phones now. But yeah, they still do landlines, but the response rate can be as low as 2 or 3%. And so by definition, if you're only talking to 2 or 3% of the electorate, it's really hard to get a representative sample. So then people started calling cell phones, and you got a little bit more of a represented sample. Then they added this text to web feature where you're texting people on their phones. And that's been a way to get people who live more online, who live more on their phones, to get them to participate. But, this response rate, back in the day used to be 10%. Polling was pretty good back then. When your response rate drops to 2 or 3%, you got a real problem with just not talking to the right people. And in a general election, it's particularly tough to find people who, there's plenty of hardcore Democrats that'll take a poll. There's plenty of hardcore MAGA Republicans that'll take a poll. But finding people who split their tickets, find people who are moderate Democrats who split their tickets, finding people who are non-MAGA Republicans, they're the hard people to find. And young people are hard to find. A lot of times the samples with young people, with voters of color, just are skewed by these response rates, that the people who are more partisan and more high information will answer the poll instead of the people who really decide elections, which are the people who they vote, but they hate politics. They don't read the newspaper. They feel like they're obligated to vote, but they almost always vote for the lesser of two evils, and they don't answer polls. They're the folks that are, every pollster for every focus group, every online media test, for every poll that they do, they're the ones, they want these low information folks who sometimes show up and sometimes don't, because they're the ones that decide every election. The hardcore Dems and the hardcore Rs, you know what they're going to say before you even ask the question.
Okay, we're going to take another break. We've been talking about the primaries. We're going to continue that discussion with a focus on Wisconsin when we come right back after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Democratic strategist Peter Giangreco is here. We are talking about tomorrow's primaries. There's going to be a ton of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different primaries tomorrow. But the ones getting most of the attention are Minnesota and Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, the Democratic candidates to get the nomination to be the next, I just blanked, the next senator. Wait a minute. Am I talking senator or governor? Peter, help me out here.
Governor.
Pardon me?
Wisconsin's governor.
Governor.
Wisconsin is the governor, yeah.
Governor, yes. You know, the older I get, Peter, sometimes the more confused I get. So I'm so thankful you're here with a younger, smarter man who has more brain cells to put me back on track. Governor.
Well, I don't know about the brain cells. I was just at my best friend from high school's son's wedding this weekend, and I'm a little dumber than I was on Friday.
You killed off a few neurons. Okay, I can understand that. So on the Democratic side, we have Francesca Hong, David Crowley, Joel Brennan, Kelda Roys. David Crowley has the support of the outgoing governor, Mr. Evers. But Francesca Hong, again, based on the polling, seems to be running away with this. And she is a progressive candidate. And I haven't done a deep dive into her and what she believes. I have read some things in the wall. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal that was just like, it was almost hysterical. It was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Francesca Hong looks like she's going to take it in Wisconsin and run away with it. And oh my God, this means like the world is coming to an end. And I don't subscribe to that kind of hysteria. But I also have not done a deep dive into any of these Democratic candidates. I'm guessing you have, so tell me what you think.
Well, before I say anything, David Crowley is my client, so everybody should take that for full disclosure here.
Why do you think David Crowley is good? Let's just talk about that then.
Well, he's got an amazing life story. This is a guy who grew up in one of the poorest zip codes in the country on the north side of Milwaukee. His family was evicted 3 times when he was growing up because they couldn't pay the rent. Here's a guy who put himself through school, who was one of the youngest ever elected to the Wisconsin Assembly. He's the youngest county executive, first Black county executive in Milwaukee, which is the biggest county in Wisconsin. And so you have this mix of young, fresh, smart candidate who's actually run something, big, complex, biggest county, someone who knows how Medicaid works directly and how it doesn't work, how the cuts have happened from Trump have really hurt folks in Milwaukee County. So you've got this great candidate. What he wasn't great at was raising money. And you had 2 Black candidates from Milwaukee, David Crowley and Mandela Barnes, who are dividing some of the votes in Milwaukee County, certainly in the Black community, but elsewhere as well. And Mandela Barnes, you remember, super left, won the primary for the Senate, and then lost us a Senate seat because he was just far too left on things like defunding the police. He was the author of the bill that would eliminate cash bail, and they just beat him over the head with it. In a year where Tony Evers won by almost 3 points, which is a landslide in Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes gave up a U.S. Senate seat we should have won.
But I agree with that. I mean, Ron Johnson should have been somebody that was very easy to get out of office. But just like with misogyny, which I think is even after the fact, after a woman loses, it's hard to tell role that played. Mandela Barnes was and still is African American in a state that has some very, 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 very conservative areas. Was it wrong? You know, like I'll say, and I know I'm not popular when I say this on the radio, but for the 2028 presidential election, I don't want to see a woman on the ticket. I don't want to see a gay man on the ticket because it's too important an election to try to convince the misogynists out there that they should open their minds to somebody new. I want somebody who's yeah.
There are a lot of people who feel the way you do. I think that there are some folks like Gretchen Whitmer, who I don't think who is also a client of our firm, who doesn't appear to be running for president.
Well, she said, I know they can change their mind, but she said she's not.
Yeah, she's not gonna. I think that she's done her time. I think in particular,
you make it sound like prison.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're talking about a woman who there was a plot to kidnap her.
Yeah,
that was serious. And so I think she rightly has decided for her family it's not the right thing. But Crowley's a guy who would be a strong candidate. He was unable to raise a lot of money. Actually got out of the race in favor of the lieutenant governor, Rodriguez, who claimed to have $1 million in the bank and was going on TV. And then it turned out her campaign manager fraudulently masked how much debt they had in the campaign. Rodriguez had to drop out of the race. Crowley got back in.
Well, you know, because the buck stops here. I mean, if you're the boss and your campaign has been so poorly run, but was that fair? I mean, should she have been double checking everything that this person who she clearly trusted, everything that they were doing?
Well, what you said before, is right. If you're the candidate, you wear the jacket. Now, I don't even remember this, but Sarah Rodriguez and I weren't we on your show together during the Democratic convention? I
don't remember. That was a long time ago. I don't have cells to remember that.
But anyway, I mean, there's somebody who was able to raise a lot of money through the Lieutenant Governors Association, the same vehicle that Peggy Flanagan is using. But just got kind of, I mean, it probably is a career-ending mistake by her campaign manager to do that. But you do, I mean, especially when you're running for governor or big city mayor or president, you can't say somebody else below you screwed it up. If you're running for an executive job, you got to be the executive. And so I think, so Sarah Rodriguez gets out, David Crowley gets back in, and you're wondering, and Mandela Barnes gets out. And you're like, why is this all happening? It's because Francesca Hong is a particularly horrible candidate. It's not just that she's left. She's come out and said that we should abolish Thanksgiving in addition to abolishing the police. And,
But I saw that quote about Thanksgiving, and I don't think it was as seriously intended as people are making it out to be. I'm not that I'm saying that she's a perfect candidate.
That may be true, but you already can see the ads that they're going to run,
Yeah.
So
the CNN MAGA guy is already saying, "Oh, I hope I get my yams at Thanksgiving."
Well, here's the thing. Here's all you need to know about this primary. The Republican Governors Association has spent $4 million trying to get Francesca Hong the nomination. They run ads, quote, I'm doing air quotes right now, attacking her for being way too progressive. Well, what happens to progressives who hear that? They say, oh, I'm voting for her. But they have spent $4 million because they know they can beat Francesca Hong in the general. So you've had this last minute, get Crowley back in the race, get him endorsed by not just Governor Evers, but by members of Congress and other folks, labor unions, and just by progressives all over the state to try to stop Hong. And so the polling, not unlike Michigan, would make it appear like Hong is running away with it. But that wasn't the case with El-Sayed, who, by the way, is a much better candidate than Francesca Hong. Is he still a weaker general election candidate than Haley Stevens? Probably. But he's also talented and smart and is a really good campaigner and might be able to overcome this stuff.
Yeah, I've been impressed with him.
Yeah, Francesca Hong just isn't a good communicator. And so if you look at the public polling, it's really less about where the numbers are now, but the trend lines. You've had, public policy polling once upon a time had, Hong up by, like El Said up 20. That polling has narrowed. And that's actually polling that David Crowley's campaign has put out. You've had this State Navigate poll that had Hong up 29 points that now has her only up 22 points. So there's a narrowing of the race. There's no question that this race is closer than what it looks like in the polls. And the question is, will this be Michigan where a 19-point lead evaporates and you win by one? Or is this an 18-point lead that evaporates and we get, the Hail Mary candidate, David Crowley, on the top? Crowley is a guy who can beat Tom Tiffany, no question about it.
Tell me about Tom Tiffany and what you know about him, because he's obviously, there's somebody else on the ballot, but everybody seems to be pretty sure that Tom Tiffany is going to be the Republican nominee.
Here's all you need to know about Tom Tiffany. Tom Tiffany is an election denier from day one. And do we really want an election denier in Wisconsin in 28 in a race that a Democrat absolutely has to win? For that reason alone, people should be voting for David Crowley, because we cannot, even if you love where Francesca Hong is on defunding the police and getting rid of Thanksgiving, even if you love those things, Tom Tiffany as governor, he would do everything in his power to take a win away from a Democrat in Wisconsin. He would probably impound those ballots that we always see, because the way they do it in Milwaukee County is they hold all of the absentee ballot, they centrally count them, and then they drop them all at once. And sometimes that's at 2 or 3 in the morning. And the election deniers are like, oh, well, when I went to bed, the Republican was ahead. When I woke up, the Democrat was ahead. There had to be lying. It's like, no, dummy, that's when they count the votes. They were all cast legally and they all counted legally. And, the election was just as safe and legal in 20 as it was in 24, when a guy named Donald Trump won. So this is the clarion call out there for Democrats who can hear my voice in Wisconsin. You have to vote for David Crowley, because we don't want Tom Tiffany deciding who the next president of the United States is going to be by, doing what Trump asked the Republican Secretary of State in Georgia to do, to go find him 11,000 votes. That will happen if Tom Tiffany's governor. He will go find the votes that Trump needs. He will impound ballots. He'll do whatever. He's said it himself he'd do it. So that's really the stakes in the race here. I think Hong winning Wisconsin is a much bigger challenge in the general election than El Said in Michigan or Peggy Flanagan in Minnesota. I think it's got a decent shot to win. So, that's really where the flashing red light is on tomorrow's primary, is that Wisconsin governor's race. It's not just about who's going to be governor of Wisconsin. It's who's going to be president 28.
Peter Giangreco represents Mr. Crowley, just so you can put that into context. Yep. It doesn't mean that he's not still telling you exactly what he thinks about the race. Peter, we have to take another one of those pesky little commercial breaks. We will be right back after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
I am talking to Democratic advisor Peter Giangreco with the Strategy Group. We have been talking about Wisconsin, and recently I talked with Pat Kreitlow. He is with the Courier newsrooms and does a newsletter called Up North News. He does a lot of their political reporting. And he said that an unusual number of Republicans were retiring or resigning from the state legislature because their fear was, with the new maps, that they would be voted out of office anyway, and so they've just decided to go while the getting's good. Do you think there is going to be a Democratic resurgence in Wisconsin? Could possibly Wisconsin turn blue at some point?
Well, you had one of the most gerrymandered maps in the country. And so in a state that's won, where the Democrats have won the last 4 state Supreme Court seats, where Tammy Baldwin has gotten reelected in tough races, even when Trump was winning the state, where Tony Evers won and won reelection by a larger margin. You could make the argument that the state was trending from, absolute purple to a slightly bluer version of purple. But the legislative map was, probably with the exception of North Carolina, the most gerrymandered in the country. When the liberals took control of the state Supreme Court, one of the first things they did was strike down the map. And you saw a lot of races move. Now that it's not even a Democratic map, it's just a down the middle map that actually some Republicans voted for based on the court order. So it becomes a question of, if there's a fair map and a level playing field, can Democrats win in Wisconsin? Absolutely. That's what's one of the other worries with Francesca Hung at the top of the ticket is, do you lose some of these close state Senate and assembly races where the Republicans do keep one or both of the Senate and the assembly? That's where the big worry has come from. Is not just that Tom Tiffany would do everything he could to throw the election in 28 to whoever the Republicans nominate, but that they might also have this golden opportunity to finally run on a fair map in a good Democratic year, and it might be thwarted by what's going on at the top of the ticket.
You mentioned something interesting. Conservative radio host Eric Erickson said that if Max Miller didn't drop out in Ohio, that he thought that there could be as many as 3 races where the Republicans would lose because they were so turned off by him that maybe the Republicans wouldn't show up to vote in other races as well. I know we weren't talking about Ohio, but I'm really surprised because I know that there was a lot of pressure brought to bear on Max Miller. Maybe it was the fact that Donald Trump refused to demand that he leave the race. But I'm really surprised that he is sticking with this. I mean, this seems like a recipe for disaster. And for those of you who don't know, he's the congressman who's accused of physically abusing his wife, possibly physically abusing his daughter. And he was also accused by a former girlfriend of being physically violent. And he refuses to resign from his race to be reelected to the Congress. What do you think about, because you're kind of talking about that same thing, this sort of like umbrella effect or a domino effect, that one candidate can affect other races?
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you bring up Ohio. We had a candidate in 2014, Ed Fitzgerald, who looked like the perfect candidate to run for governor, former, FBI prosecutor, was the Cuyahoga County executive who had cut taxes. He looked like the perfect Democrat to run. And then the day after you could replace the nominee on the ticket, Republicans dropped opposition research that he was found in a car at 4 a.m. with a woman, not his wife. And the scandal was so bad. This is 2014, so it seems quaint now, but he got wiped out by double digits, and the Democratic Party almost ceased to exist in Ohio. It's only now are we, because every single candidate lost by double digits. Yes, it was 2014. That was a wave Republican election. But in Ohio, it destroyed the party for a generation, because the first thing the Republicans did was redo the map. And they put them into veto-proof majorities in both the Senate and the House in Ohio. So one bad candidate at the top can create a disaster below. That's the worry in Wisconsin. And the only good news for the Republicans is Miller's only a member of Congress, so he's only going to have this effect in, I believe it's Ohio 7 where he's running. But just to make this more dramatic, his ex-wife is the daughter of the Republican U.S. Senator Bernie Moreno. And so Moreno and other members of the U.S. Senate who are Republicans have called on Miller to quit, and he refuses to do so. So there's a whole nother level of drama there.
Bernie Moreno said that he felt that his ex-son-in-law needed psychological counseling.
Yeah, he said he doesn't belong in Congress. He needs to get help. So that one has more drama than just one congressional, one congressional seat. This is a guy who is a former Trump aide who worked in the White House. He's not related to the other Miller in the White House, but he's just as bad a guy. So, and so that's, and you've got, allegations that he broke his 2-year-old daughter's collarbone, allegations that he threw boiling water at his ex-wife, very graphic, and, then it compounded things by releasing all the court documents by mistake. And some of the court documents had intimate photos of a 2-year-old daughter that may have been illegal to put on the internet. So this thing has so many layers of weirdness about it that I think Miller was probably going to have a tight race just based on, the Democratic year that might be coming. I think he's a lock to lose now.
Before we wrap up, I have to talk to you about the midterm elections. Pretty much anybody you talk to said that Trump is going to try to derail or interfere in the midterm elections some way. Congressman Jim Himes, I thought, had the scariest take on this. And he said that if it looked like Democrats were going to win big, as most people expect, that Donald Trump would jump in and say, like, oh, I've got people in the government in Venezuela are admitting to me that they toyed with our voting machines and that this is not a free and fair election. Therefore, I'm negating it, or we are going to, confiscate all the materials, et cetera, or so forth. What do you think about the midterms, and how do we get ready for it?
That could happen. I don't think it's a far-fetched fantasy. It's why people really should vote early in person everywhere you can. The Republicans have already tried to thwart mail-in balloting by getting the Postmaster General to change the way mail ballots are processed. It used to be as soon as the post office got a ballot, they would postmark it right away, because if it's postmarked before Election Day or on Election Day, it counts. Now they're going to let it sit for 4 or 5 days because they know Democrats vote by mail more than Republicans do. So that's already happening. If you're absolutely going to vote by mail, make sure that you or somebody drives your car to a ballot location and drops it off personally. It's much better to vote early in person. That's the best way to vote. That way your vote is in, it's in the system. I did that in the Michigan primary. I filled out my mail ballot. I drove it over to the New Buffalo Township and put it in the ballot box. And a couple hours later, I got an email from the Secretary of State saying, we have your ballot. That's the best way to vote, because on Election Day, depending on where you live, if you live in a heavily Democratic precinct in a city, say in Milwaukee or in Detroit, I would not be shocked if ICE agents showed up at the polls or other federal agents tried to create long lines, create panic, create chaos. Somebody who might have had an outstanding record who was going to go vote might decide, I'm not going there if there's federal officers there. They just try to create chaos and lines and try to get you not to vote. That's why it's really important. Vote in person, vote early. Don't wait till Election Day. Don't mail in your ballot. Take the ballot in and vote in person. Take yourself and vote in person. That's the best way to try to thwart Trump, because he's going to try something. There's no way he will lie, cheat, steal. That's his whole life. That's how that's how his father made money. That's how he made money. He's actively using his presidency to plunder for his family now. He is the king of lying, cheating, and stealing. Why wouldn't he try to do it to the election the way he tried to in 2020?
I agree. Peter Giangreco with the Strategy Group. Peter, thank you so much for spending part of your day with us. Really appreciate it.
Okay, Joan, see you soon.
Okie dokie. Bye.
Bye.
That's going to do it for me today. As you, of course, know, Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez is up next. Patty is going to be with Reed McCollum, chair of the Democratic Party of DuPage County. Choose Views will start tomorrow at 6 a.m. He's going to be speaking to the director of research with the Yale University's Budget Lab. He's also going to be talking with North Carolina Democratic State Rep Rodney Pierce and Illinois Congressman Danny Davis. And Wednesday, Mike Quigley is going to be with Richard. I will see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Have you written all this down? There's always a quiz. Did you know there was a quiz? Tomorrow, we're going to do something that we did on the 3rd of July. Brian Endless and Joel Ostro are going to join me for the segment from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. We're going to do what we did before. We're going to talk about the news of the day. We are going to take your calls all day and read your texts all day. And it's going to be a really fun, really interactive day tomorrow for me on the radio. I hope you will join us. Until then, have a great evening. Take care and good night.